It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, thanks for being with us here on this Thursday. So much to get to on the show. Raymond Johnson, former Georgia Southern D lineman, will join us here on 3 and Out, and we'll talk about his trek to the draft. Had a tremendous senior season there for Georgia Southern, and he will join us here in hour number 1. Also, Dan Matthews, 6A The Fan, will join us. We'll talk about his column, talking about will Kirby Smart bring a title to Athens? Not so sure about that. We'll find out what would make him more sure coming up here on the show. Also, Bud Ellis will join us. We'll talk some Braves baseball as we're about 5 days in to spring training, counting down towards the start of the season. What are some of those questions that are out there for the Braves, and what are some of those that are getting answered by the Braves here early on in spring training? So plenty to get to here on the show, but right off the bat, new things always out there on the horizon in terms of sports and innovation. Well, Overtime, who is a highlight reel company, is starting a new league. It's aimed at 16 to 18-year-olds, and it will give them the opportunity to focus on a pro career. And some of you might be saying, well, don't we already have that with like the IMGs and some of the prep academies and all that? Well, here is the difference there. This will be for approximately the top 30 basketball players in the country that are of that high 16 to 18-year-old age, and they will be paid $100,000 to participate in this thing. They'll get schooling, nutrition, insurance policy, healthcare, all of that. The plan right now is to move the players, possibly their families, into one city. They'll move around and play games in different cities against each other. So those top 30 players will play against each other. The other rub, fellas, you do this, obviously you're getting paid $100,000 by this new league. Not eligible for high school ball or college ball any longer. So we will see how this thing evolves. But on the surface, is this an idea that has sustainability, getting high school kids and paying them to, instead of the other way around, instead of going to a prep academy and developing, you get paid to play basketball, and they'll pay for your school and the meals and things of that nature.
Yeah, potentially. It's interesting. It's fascinating to think about sort of the subsidiaries, not the right word, leagues like the XFL and the AAF, but to think about kind of the new sort of unique pathways forward, whatever that may be, whether it's to the professional ranks, whether it's to just a career beyond what you're currently doing. It's interesting to think about. I think the challenge, like you kind of hinted at there, Kevin, is how do you go from idea to implementation? And that's the challenge for any business. When you add the 100,000 plus 100,000 in college scholarship money, plus insurance costs, plus travel money, and that's just for basketball, not for the nutrition, the education, et cetera. It adds up. You wonder, can a lot of that be covered by potentially owning your own broadcast rights, selling ads, perhaps partnering up access-wise for your games to be a la carte, available on TV, on digital, whatever. I think that's a possibility. I would wonder about kind of maintaining that once you get through the novelty phase, because I think your first reaction for me, Ben, it's like, hey, that's exciting. That's innovative. That's really cool. But then how do you sustain that? What sort of the newness wears off? Interesting is the word I keep going back to, but from a business model standpoint, I think Christian was using that phrase in the show meeting. What is the long-term kind of financial viability angle? Obviously, I'm not smart enough to even talk about that stuff, much less enact it. But I think those are the questions that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, every new league is going to have some level of difficulty. But when you talk about the fact that when you talk about high school athletics, what gives us a reason to watch any high school athlete is when they stand out above the rest. When you hearing different names, no one knew who, and I'm just using, no one knew who Trevor Lawrence was until we started hearing his name on the 7-on-7 circuit. When you talk about basketball, if you guys ever seen the AAU circuit, it is crazy. And a lot of these players only get noticed in basketball through the AAU circuit. So a guy like Carmelo Anthony, who was one of the big investors, and it's probably more investors. He's going to be the only one that's noteworthy to where everybody's going to know. He's not throwing his money at something that he don't know is going to be profitable. But I think what they're doing is they're looking at the odds of saying, okay, we take 30 guys. Out of the 30, we might get 6 or 7 of them that might go pro. Well, that's enough. That's still a lot when you talk about a percentage of how many guys go to college and you never ever even know who they are. If you got 30 high school players going around from city to city, they're going to be broadcasting so we'll know what city they're going to be in, even if it is the same players. BJ, I definitely think it could be profitable. LeBron James' son, Bronny, plays on a team in California. And the thing is, they travel around. And the thing is, every team they play, they broadcast. They're on Amazon Prime. Now, I know they play on other high school teams. Outside of LeBron James' kid, I could not tell you another kid on that team. But because you had a big enough name, they going all around and people are like watching them play. I am telling you, this thing can work because of how basketball is set up. High school basketball is one to where unless a kid is a Zion Williamson, I mean, how many players do we even know in high school that doesn't have all this fanfare? So the guy who used to film Zion Williamson when he was in South Carolina, that was a overtime. That was a guy from overtime. He was one of the media guys. That's how they say, hey, man, how can we take this and make it bigger? So I do think, and understand this too. If Zion Williamson got helped out by overtime, you don't think they're going to go to Zion to try to help? They're going to utilize the people they helped before. So it's not like Carmelo is going to be the end-all, be-all. Kevin, when you're trying something new, it's not, we always look at the sustainability aspect of it, but you got to give it a chance first because what they're doing is they're saying, okay, when you talk about college basketball, they're going to pick who's going to be the number one pick. We just happen to be in the state this year that the number one pick was coming out of Georgia of all places, not Duke, not North Carolina. So the best players ain't even going to the best schools no more.
Well,
so I just think
again, there to me is the challenge if you're going to put a league like this together. Now, yes, you are paying players to participate in your league, but that's also just wildly assuming that all of the top 30 players would rather come play in this league than, say, go to Duke or Kansas or Kentucky or North Carolina or anywhere where you can play in front of full arenas, March Madness, the Final Four maybe, and things like that are also once-in-a-lifetime type opportunities. I think a lot of it also depends on, are you actually getting the top 30 players out there, and do all of them, or even a majority of them, want to do this as opposed to participate in the the big deal, which is obviously March Madness and the college football NCAA tournament.
No, I was just gonna say, BJ. I mean, listen. I know we don't like this. Give LaMelo Ball a lot of credit for this. LaMelo Ball did not go to high school. LaMelo Ball was a guy who, because of his father, went all around, and he still was the second pick in the draft. He did not play in high school, and he went to basketball leagues of places I didn't even know had basketball leagues. I mean, when he went overseas the first time, I think the head coach was also a butcher. So not only did he play, he got some really, really good meat. All I'm saying is, Kevin, it is sustainable because once again, the 16-year-old right now who's going to be the number one pick in the draft is probably what? A freshman in high school. They already said he's going to be the number one pick, but he's in high school. And he's only going to college because of a requirement. He's only going because the NCAA say he got to be 1 year removed from high school. So again,
this is not, I just want to make this clear. This is not instead of college. I mean, obviously you could still, these kids would still be in high school. Like you would do this junior, senior year of high school, and college would just be out because you would obviously be ineligible.
Well, the thing about it is this. I know on the back end, they're saying they get $100,000 for a college tuition. All right. So think about this. I know no matter what, I have to make my college experience fit a $100,000 budget. But I ain't walking into college. Just say I did it since I was 16. I graduated high school at 17. If I played basketball, I made $200,000 and I am going to college with $100,000, even if I don't go pro, which that is the goal. But I think what starts happening is a lot of these guys are going to get in this league. And sometimes, man, the reality of it is all of them might not go pro. But if I don't go pro, and I still get to go to college.
No, that is the reality because you have 30 kids. How many draft picks are there?
It's 30, and it's 60 and all, but really 30 that matter. Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying though, Kevin. It's a trade. I think the trade-off is what LaMelo Ball did. It's like, look, I want to go pro. No, let me say this. Stop that. Forget that. Everybody who plays college athletics, basketball and football want to go pro. Now, if you crazy enough to think I could go pro in football, they got 25 scholarships and only 300 some guys gonna get drafted. all they're doing is catering to the fact that most of these guys want to get paid off their likeness quicker. And if they end up going pro, so be it. But if not, you still get a chance to go to college as a regular student. If that's my trade-off, hey, because like I said, a lot of players aren't going pro, and sometimes it takes going to college to realize you're not going, especially if so that's what I'm saying.
I think that's the key point here is assuming this model is maintained and sustained. Think about this. If you're a big time 5-star recruit or whatever, and you feel like you can go to the NBA and you go to college, what's the return for going to college? You get your education paid for, and that's very valuable, but you're not getting that and money. If you're a big 5-star recruit, and I understand this would be your high school experience, but if you're a big 5-star recruit and you decide to go this route, you would get your college paid for, much like a college scholarship provides. You would get the $100,000 and you would get $100,000 cash. I mean, so from that standpoint, the risk would be, I guess, aside from the business model failing, the risk would be, like Kevin said, you're not playing college basketball. You would still get your education paid for, and you would get $100,000, which you would not get if you go play at Kansas, Kentucky, go play college basketball. Now, as a fan, I love college basketball. It's right up there with college football to me as my favorite sport. But if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, I'm one of the elite players in the country, I can get paid and still have the asset or the benefit that college basketball provides as a secondary option when my basketball career is done. That's a pretty powerful offer. It is. And I've seen a lot of social media stuff saying, well, who are the stars going to be? Well, Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because to me, the stage is what makes the star. Like Ben, I don't know this. I'm guessing before you played football at Florida, you were known around town, you were known to your friends and family, but you weren't necessarily a national star.
No.
Florida and the Florida Gator program, in addition to your individual success and talent, is what makes you a known commodity. So while we may not know player X when he first goes to this school, when he's on Amazon Prime and is being talked about on SportsCenter and is on ESPN, the stage makes the star, assuming the talent is there, which I think that's the idea here.
But at the same time, too, I understand what you're saying when you say, like, yeah, the stage do make the star. But what if a star that is Carmelo Anthony, who has connects, I don't know, LeBron James and other guys who say, hey, who can we reach out to make sure? And think about it. These are going to be 30 of the most highly sought after high school basketball players in the country, not because of how they play, but because of the position they're in. They are the only 30 players we know who they are because they are a part of a network and they're getting paid. Like if somebody go, they got this league of high school players to get paid. What are you talking about? You're going to just tune in, even if you don't stay tuned in. So all I'm saying is, if I'm a part of think about it. There's a reason why guys want to be first-team All-American, because that stuff matters in the grand scheme of things of your resume. If I'm one of the 30 high school basketball players that's a part of this league called Overtime, that Carmelo Anthony is one of the investors of it, I'm going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to be bigger than any other player regardless. I mean, they got the player from Oklahoma State being considered the number one player in the country, coming out as number one pick in the 2022 NBA draft. I don't even know who he is, but they're already saying he's going to be. So I think at least for a year or two, it's going to be really, really fun. Will it fizzle out? We don't know.
Here's my question to you, though, Ben, because and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but how many basketball players, like high school basketball players, not from the city of Savannah, can we name as a show right now?
I can't name any.
Okay, so that's kind of my point is, and we wouldn't be the target audience then, right? So my question would be, where does the money come from? Because for the most part, 15 to 19-year-olds aren't at the same level as 30 to 60-year-olds, right? Like we sit down and we watch our favorite teams, and for the most part, fan bases themselves as sports fans, you basically have one team at a time where you can really donate your time and energy to loving, right? Like you're truly passionate about and consume every single game, right? So I'm just curious. I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just curious where the physical side is going to come from. Where's that support going to come from? Because it's not going to be from typical sports viewers.
That I would disagree with that because the whole thing about it is that would be like saying because I'm not a golfer they don't cater to me. I mean because I don't like golf. No, they're gonna know how to cater to their target. If they got 16 to 18-year-olds,
the target audience.
No, their target audience is gonna be the same people they're employing. 16 to 18-year-olds.
16 to 18-year-olds don't watch standard, and there's metrics that back this up. 16 to 18-year-olds don't watch standard broadcast television at the same rate you and I do.
They're not gonna. But the thing about it is if it represents a league that they could potentially make money in, and they're gonna probably have a guy they played against, heard about, they're gonna watch it. I mean, my son and nephew, they look at other people play video games, right? And to me, I think that's crazy. But the average kid likes to watch another kid play video games on YouTube. I mean, it is crazy. I'm just telling you, Kev. I mean, I'm telling you, Christian, there is no way that when you think about the fact, if I'm coming out and I'm a basketball player and I could potentially make $100,000 if I'm in high school, that's going to appeal to me and I'm going to watch those guys. I'm just saying, when you think about social media is going to play a big role. And so I just think that we'll see what happens. But I mean, I just think that the target audience, I don't think that's going to be hard to do.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll come back and we will be joined by Raymond Johnson, 4-time All Sunbelt Selection, 2020 All-American, getting ready for the draft. He'll join us here next on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, glad you're making us a part of your day. Again, we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as ESPNCoastal.com audio-wise, and I appreciate you joining us here on the show. Send your comments in via Twitter at Pigskin Radio. College football was very, very good to our next guest, a All-American in 2020, four-time All-Sun Belt selection, and 14 and a half tackles for loss a season ago in college football for Georgia Southern. Raymond Johnson joins us here on 3 and Out. Raymond, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, man. I appreciate y'all having me.
I appreciate you coming on. And again, obviously, describe 2020. You're one of one team in college football to play a full 12 games. What was 2020 like in retrospect as you wrapped up your college career?
Man, 2020 was a crazy year, man. It was just everywhere. Plenty of cancellations, plenty of postponements, a lot of action. You know, it was just everywhere, man. If I could describe it, that's exactly the word I use, everywhere. It was no organized schedule. You were just basically living in the moment all year long. But it was still a blessing, and still thankful we got to play it.
Raymond, I'm looking at your resume, man. Almost 40 career tackles for loss, almost 20 sacks, almost 30 quarterback hurries. Where does your playmaking knack come from? And describe your mindset when you're playing defense there in the trenches.
I think my playmaking come from just that feeling of not being denied, man. I don't, I like to dominate in everything I do. And that's always in my mind, like, just dominate. And I'm sorry, what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Just what your mindset is, man. I mean, to be that productive year in and year out, what's your mindset when you suit up?
Man, it's just when I suit up, it's dominate, man. That's just all on my mind, dominate. And as far as the off season, it's just you got to have that mindset of getting better every year. And that's just the mindset I took. I think my stats are preach for it. You look at it, you just see tremendous improvement year by year, and that's exactly what I look for doing.
And Raymond, when you look at the fact that as you mentioned, 2020, I mean, it was everywhere. When you look at everything you've dealt with at your time at Georgia Southern, I mean, you was on a team that went from, double-digit losses to double-digit wins. You talk about a team that had to deal with all type of adversity. How much better did 2020 and everything you dealt with in Statesboro just prepare you for what's coming on the next level?
Oh, man, it was a huge preparation, man, because it really tested my mental stability, man. Like you said, you go from being on a 2-10 team and you playing your freshman year and you're like, oh, man, this is college football. You get a bad taste starting off with college football, and the next thing you know, you're a double-digit team win. And then it's an emotional roller coaster, but I think it's perfect preparation for what I got coming at hand, man, because the NFL is, it's unkind. It's a business world. It's all about the dollar in the NFL. So I think it was just perfect preparation, man. Just letting me know, like, you don't have many days to take off. Every day is a work day, and anything can happen. So just be ready for it.
Raymond, what is the preparation like for you now, getting ready for that? Obviously, no combine. I'm sure you may have a pro day there at Georgia Southern, but what's the next step as you look ahead towards the NFL here?
What I'm basically doing now is just, of course, I'm training down here in Exos, Florida, training with some top talent. I've been training with guys like Greg Russo, Azeez Ojulari, just seeing my game transform into another level. And just the preparation thing mentally for me was just like, now I'm trying to key in on schemes and stuff and advance my game to the next level, basically, with things like more film and instead of like how I used to watch film in college, it's on a deeper level now. So you're looking at offensive formations and what the coach like to do on this part of the field or the low red zone, things of that cadence.
And Raymond, when scouts look at your game tape, they're going to see a number of impressive performances. I remember the Georgia State game from last year. You had 5 tackles for loss in one game. For some defensive linemen, that's a good season. Walk us through that game and what it was like to be that unstoppable.
Man, it's a fun feeling, man. It's always fun when you can make plays with your brothers, man. And like I said, it's preparation, man. You got to prepare for it, and you can't be surprised when it happens. When you think about dominating, you got to, you can't be surprised when it happens. You got to know it's coming. And I knew that type of game was coming soon. I didn't know if it was going to be Georgia State or not, but I was ready for it.
And Raymond, you mentioned, man, you down in Florida with guys like, Gregory Rousseau. You talk about Azeez Ojulari. It's one thing to see these guys. I mean, obviously, Azeez Ojulari being a guy that played in the same state as you. I mean, Gregory Rousseau, coming out of Miami. When you get down there with those guys and you realize they're putting you guys through the same drills, there is no, hey, Raymond, you over here, and Greg, you over there, and Azeez, you over there. What were you able to take from those guys? Because I remember when I was coming out and I was in New Orleans with a whole bunch of other guys. You go from, obviously, you want to play your best, but you got to be able to learn something from those guys, and they got to be able to learn something from you.
Yeah, man. We man, the thing I love about these guys is like we all help each other. And I do take skills from these guys. Z's, I'm working with Z's, and Z's taught me, his tab club. And it's a crazy move, man. That he's perfected. So I learned that from him. And Greg taught me how to work with length, him being 6'7" and stuff. So, and I taught Greg, how to, power moves and stuff, when to use them, when they throw it. And it's just great having these guys around because, you teach each other so much. And then from the competing aspect, you really see your game transform to another level. Like, I always knew I was an athlete, but just being around other superb athletes, it helps you take your game to another level. So, we all feeding off each other and getting better from it.
Georgia Southern has had a number of guys go on to the NFL and have great success. I mean, you think about the history and the tradition of Georgia Southern, that pipeline to the NFL is part of that. What's it mean to you to not only be one of the great players in Georgia Southern history, but now have a chance to add to that legacy of guys going from Statesboro to the pros?
Oh, man, it's huge, man. Anybody who knows me knows Statesboro is like a second home to me, and I forever be indebted to them. And just being able to be a part of that in history and have an opportunity to play at the next level and give back to this school and, just continue on a great tradition, man, it's a huge honor to me. And I carry myself with pride because of it. It's not every day you get to live this dream that most people have. So I'm very blessed for it.
And Raymond, man, I mean, before we let you out of here, I mean, now BJ talked about that great tradition of Georgia Southern. You saying that Statesboro, it's like a second home to you. What is it gonna mean when you get drafted? It doesn't matter where you get drafted; it's what you do when you get drafted. Every player coming in college, it don't matter the Georgia Southern, Georgia, Florida, doesn't matter. We have dreams of playing on the next level. Your dreams about to come through to reality, despite a pandemic and everything you went through in college. What is it gonna mean when you see whatever team selects Raymond Johnson at whatever pick in the 2021 draft?
Man, whatever team select me, man, just know they're getting the stud. And that's not cockiness, but that's just from humbleness and confidence and readiness. I've been waiting on this moment, man. So whatever team gives me, just know I'm coming to work. I'm putting it down. I'm laying it down, everything I got, and I'm putting it all online.
Raymond Johnson, our guest here on 3 and Out. Raymond, we appreciate the time. Continued success to you as you move forward. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you all. Y'all have a good one.
Appreciate it. Raymond Johnson, our guest here on 3 and Out, former Georgia Southern defensive lineman, 4-time All Sun Belt and 2020 All-American, 8th nationally in tackles for loss last season with 14 and a half. So somebody's going to get themselves a good one there, BJ and Ben, at the end of the day. And he's a guy that has got a motor and it doesn't slow down.
Great player. He's getting drafted. And there are a couple of really good edge rushers coming out of the Sun Belt. Teron Jackson up at Coastal Carolina. But look at his production, Ben. Almost 40 career tackles for loss. Almost 30 quarterback hurries. Almost 20 sacks. This guy's a playmaker. He's been at his best on the big stage. Really good player coming out of Georgia Southern.
Man, he's one of those guys. I mean, remind me of some players that I played with BJ when I was in the NFL that really bring their hard hat, as they say, to work. And the thing is, what I like the most about what Raymond said was he probably watched Gregory Rousseau. Gregory Rousseau, listen, I'm tall, man, so I have to use my length. Let me show you how I use my length. If I'm Azeez Ojulari, I'm 6'2", so I got to use my explosiveness. And the thing is, you go, but what probably made Raymond's probably stand is, hey, Raymond, man, you live in the backfield. How do you do that? It's funny that they want something from you too. Like you think, hey, man, we are both teachers and pupils of this game. And that's what I love the most is, doesn't matter. Okay, one went to Miami, one went to Georgia, you went to Georgia Southern. We both trying to get to that. We trying to eat in the backfield. So you came in, Raymond Johnson, with all these stats. I'm walking out. Gregory Rousseau, I know what he does. Aziz Ojolari, I know what he does, and you building a camaraderie. So I'm happy for him. And I like how he say, look, man, I'm just telling you, when they get me, they already know. And I like how he had to say, I'm humble now, but no, you don't. No. You don't got to be humble. Put that quarterback. The quarterback should be looking up at the sky, saying it was a lovely day this weekend when you get done playing.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Appreciate Raymond Johnson joining us here on 3 and Out. We'll chat with Dan Matthews, 680 The Fan in Atlanta, coming up in just a little bit. Has a article out. Kirby Smart, will he bring a title to Athens? Not so sure. So we'll talk to Dan coming up here in just a little bit if he believes Kirby Smart ultimately the guy to bring a championship to Athens.
Well, and we can ask him, but I would imagine part of that equation, part of that question is, can you beat Alabama? Alabama's not going anywhere.
That's not part. That's a huge part of it. That's a
right. I mean, they're not going anywhere, and Georgia has the unfortunate reality of being geographically close to the state of Alabama, and thus the University of Alabama. Ben, I know your Gators got to deal with them right away, but look, man, when you're a big time program with big time expectations, that's who you compare yourself against. The question is not, is Georgia better than Tennessee? Is Georgia better than Auburn? The question is Georgia better than Florida? And is Georgia better than Alabama?
So we'll chat with him about that and see what kind of the thesis of his argument is about Kirby Smart when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, also live streaming ESPNCoastal.com, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well. As always, a great time to talk college football here on 3 and Out. As our next guest joins us, Dan Matthews, 680 The Fan, asked the question, will Kirby Smart win a national title? I'm not so sure. His column there on 680thefan.com. And Dan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, very well, guys. How you guys doing today?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. So what makes you not so sure? What's the big drawback that you're seeing right now for Kirby Smart?
Well, I would say that it's the points that I brought up. Is you haven't passed the Alabama test. You've only won one SEC title. You've gotten there a couple more times after that, but you still have only won one, and you've only gotten to the college football playoff just once. So I think that it was more of just coming from a standpoint of, we hear Georgia fans all the time. I'm sure you guys, your listeners say it. I mean, we all fall into the trap of, oh, Kirby's going to get him one. And I think my point was, what makes us believe? I mean, I think that it was more coming from a standpoint of, I'm kind of tired of hearing the future is bright. I'm tired of hearing it about the Braves. I'm tired of hearing it about the Falcons. I mean, we've heard the same thing with Trae Young and the Hawks now, and soon enough it becomes the present and the past. So it's just kind of like why do we just believe that this is going to happen? Like, I get that the recruiting is strong and that at least the potential is there. But guys, I mean, as we've seen, potential doesn't always mean that it's met.
I know after the Falcons made their run to the Super Bowl, a lot of people said, well, it's okay, they're going to be back. And, of course, after Georgia's loss to Alabama on 2nd and Tua, a lot of people said, it's okay, they're going to be back. How dangerous is it to think like that in sports?
It's incredibly dangerous. And as a matter of fact, with the roster that they have coming back this year for Georgia, I've said it numerous times on the Chuck Oliver show, this needs to be Kirby's toughest offseason in terms of demands from the players and what is being, in terms of what is motivating them, because it needs to be told to this Georgia team. I think if nothing else, you go to the press clippings, you go to everything of, look how many times we've been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I mean, who can forget 2008 when it was Matthew Stafford, No Sean, and I forget who else was on the cover, but wasn't it like Top Dogs? And it was like Georgia ready to take the college football world by storm. And then that season ended the way that it did, not getting to the college football playoff, which at the time you didn't have it, but you get my point. I think that that's got to be the message. It's got to be, look, no more of our potential, no more of what we should be. It needs to be, we haven't proven it yet. It's time for us to prove the doubters wrong. It's time for everybody to stop saying, same old Georgia, all the preseason buzz, but then they never meet up with it. And I think that's more than anything just kind of what I'd like to see, and just kind of tired of the, like I said, and to your point, I mean, you lose one of those tough games. Oh, it's all right, we'll be back. What guarantees that?
And then how much it has to do with the fact that obviously Georgia is the biggest brand in the state. They obviously have a big-time coach, big-time tradition there, and the ink in the paper, I don't think nobody gets more media attention in the offseason going into the regular season than a team like Georgia. And it's almost like when they don't meet expectations, it's like the media or whomever says, we got to pump more behind this team to make sure people know. I mean, JT Daniels is going to lead Georgia to the promised land. And we get to talking about things with Georgia that we've never seen Georgia do before. And sometimes it's half their fault because of who they are, and probably half everybody else's fault because everybody seems to know something that Georgia hasn't seemed to figure out yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's also, too, Ben, I think a big thing that factors in as well is, let's take the Heisman Trophy, for example. I always tell people when the Heisman Trophy odds come out, don't ever bet on the guy that is the front runner. So right now, the odds-on favorite, unless they've changed, is Spencer Rattler, right? Because that guy can say, oh, I don't pay attention to it. It is what it is, all that kind of stuff. That wears on you. That wears on you throughout the entire off season, that it's, oh, hey, you're the Heisman front runner. And even if it's not necessarily at the front of your mind, somewhere in the back of your mind, it's I've got a standard to live up to this season. And that's not a bad thing, but I think that probably in some cases in Athens, that kind of has festered into the way that these teams get ready for a season of, oh, hey, we're great. We know that we're great. And it's not necessarily a situation where there's an urgency to kind of get things done. I think that that's where you do need to have that urgency where, there had to be that team that started this run for Nick Saban. And somebody pointed out on Twitter today, too, because I brought up Clemson in it as well, that it took Dabo 8 years to get things going at Clemson. And I even countered with the point, too. I said, yeah, he also had to get over the Clemsoning thing. And a guy named Deshaun Watson came along and turned that program around and made the program what it is. I think that that's something that just has to continue. And again, I think that this 2021 team can be the one that kind of turns the corner because you've got the standout quarterback in JT Daniels. You've got the talent on the outside with George Pickens and Jermaine Burton. I mean, you've got a strong running backs group, as we just heard Del McGee talk about the other day. The pieces are there. I think that now it's just it's a situation where as a team, you have to kind of say, look, I think we're all kind of tired of being told how great we are in the preseason and then not being able to get it done later on. I mean, there have been countless other examples. I mean, Mac Brown, that was the biggest thing for him when he was at Texas. He can never beat Oklahoma. He can't win that game until Vince Young came along and he finally did. So you can change the trajectory of your program. You can change the perception. I think that's up to what this program needs to do now.
And Dan, obviously, for all that you just talked about, I mean, this comes to a head in week one, right? I mean, it's Clemson right out of the gate in the top five, I would imagine at worst, Clemson team, game one, week one.
Yeah, I mean, and, Phil Steele putting out what would be his top 10 the other day, it was Clemson 2, Georgia 3. So you're exactly right. That's going to be a huge game. And it proves to, another part where, I know that I said the criteria is one of them, you got to beat Alabama. Well, I think you got to put Clemson right there because as we all see, at least for the success of national titles racked up over the last few years, Alabama is the platinum standard right now. Clemson's close. I mean, Clemson's at least within moderate visibility of what Alabama is. And if you beat a team like that early on in the season, absolutely you feel good about yourself heading into the rest of the way. And you feel good about taking on this SEC East schedule that you have. And then, the good news is you don't have Alabama or LSU as your SEC West crossover along with Auburn this year. So it kind of sets you up to be able to have a magical run to get back to Atlanta and hopefully be able to win the SEC and get back to the college football playoffs. So even though it's not necessarily going to count against them in terms of, if you lose that game, you can come back. I still think that this is a game that it's got to burn you to have that game because Clemson is one of the best programs in college football. I mean, right there, right behind Alabama. And in some cases have been the ones who've been able to take down Alabama. So yeah, it's a very strong test for you that if you can pass that, I mean, you definitely are able to add more confidence to your program.
And Dan, of course, expectations are a powerful thing. They come from a lot of places, including, I think, for all of us from the recruiting rankings. Do you think that talking to Dog fans, you get the sense that when you look at the recruiting rankings, Alabama's at the top every year. They got the titles that maybe Georgia fans feel like those number 1 and 2 recruiting classes should be translating. I know that's a heck of a standard, but should be translating to those national title opportunities.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, the recruiting has jumped up under Kirby. And of course, the comparisons are always to what Rick was able to do. That 2013 class is what got Mark Richt fired with Bryce Ramsey and others from that class. I mean, I guess I better tread lightly because I know I'm talking near Bryce's hometown in Camden County. But still, that was a class that fell flat. And when you have a class like that, it can wreck your program. And, Kirby luckily has not had those classes. I mean, I don't have the rankings in front of me, but gosh, guys, maybe like 7th or 5th was maybe the worst that he's had over the last few years. So he's signing top 10 classes. The only thing that I kind of worry about with Kirby, and here's the comparison, is Kirby every year, they sign their 20, 25 guys. they sign their classes, and they have a strong group of players coming in. You look at Clemson, for example. Clemson, in the way that they recruit, they don't just give out offers to players, and when they tell them, hey, we're giving you this offer, if you commit, then awesome. If you decommit, the door is not open anymore. And I'm not saying that you have to do that, but the way that Clemson, I think, has been able to hit on so many players is because they have a strategic approach of going after the players that they want, getting them. And in terms of the rankings, it's not always great because they'll sign 17, 18 players. I think in some cases, you could look at a program like Georgia, Alabama, and others who kind of follow the approach of let's get as many great players here as we can. It can hurt you because you don't have enough opportunities to go around. And soon enough, it starts to really hurt you from the transfer portal because now we all know. I mean, Ben, it's a lot different from when you played. That it's pretty much now, if you don't get your opportunity right away, it's hey, let me look around and see if there's an opportunity somewhere else that better fits me to play early on, as opposed to being third or fourth in the secondary right now and not having an opportunity to play behind the guys that are in front of me. And we'll see what happens too with the one-time transfer if that goes through. If that goes through, then my point is going to be even more.
Sure. Dan, I hate to cut you off, but we are up against it. We got the hard break coming. We appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, hey, appreciate it, guys. I get a little long-winded. I appreciate it.
It's all right. Dan Matthews, 6A The Fan, joining us here on 3 and Out. We're coming right back. Hour 2, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com on your mobile device with the ESPN app. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hour 2 here on 3 and Out. Plenty to get to this hour, as we will take 3 here momentarily. We'll get to some of our SEC trios. Who are some just dangerous trios in the SEC teams are going to have to worry about? We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. Also, Georgia's AD made an announcement on their plans for football and fans coming up in the fall. We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, fellas, take 1. If we had to partake in the combine, or the combine's not happening this year, but if we had to do it, choosing people just here from the show and the office to do the following drills: the 40, the 3-cone drill, route running, the bench press, and the vertical. Who are we choosing? And we can only choose one, because obviously the logical choice would be to have the guy who actually did all these do them, but we can only use Ben one time. So what we doing?
Well, I'll say this, and Ben, we'll let you share an opinion on what you think you should do, but I think based on the room, you should probably do the bench press because I'm doing 225 a grand total of 0 times. I think Cody and Christian got a couple in them probably. Kev, you probably got a couple. But
whoa. No, why are you giving me a cup? Like, I haven't been on a bench press in a long time, so I don't think I'm doing just sight unseen a quote couple of 225. Like, no, I don't know.
You're a big, strong guy. You're big upper body.
No, but I've never been able to bench very much. My max ever, this is back in college when I actually worked out, was like 220. So like, I've never been like bench strong, like never. So to say I'm going to get 225 after not going to the gym and working out, that's, boy, you are reaching.
So Ben, you got to do the bench then.
No, I will do the bench, and I'll do the best that I can. But this is the thing: when we first saw this, I'm like, okay, the athletic area. This is basically comes down to 2 people. Like, okay, let me just go ahead and say, we're gonna let the route running be done by PJ, because PJ got that quick in and out. BJ moves his head, but he doesn't move his body, so he's doing the 3-cone, right? This comes down to 2 things: the 40 and the vertical. Now, Cody, for some reason, is like.
I mean, first though, Ben, only one of us on the show is internationally famous for running a 40, and it's not you.
He's internationally known, not just on the microphone.
But I didn't run the 40; I ran a 35. So,
well, listen, at the end of the day, if they would have looked to the left, they would have like, well, he just ran a 4.3. That's also a 35, not a 40. But so Christian and Cody is deciding what we're gonna do with them. But this is what we decided: BJ 3-cone. PJ the route running, me do the bench. Cody is he just fast for no apparent, like Cody just will take off. But I be looking at Christian, Christian be putting out some of his videos, workout videos, on social media, right? He puts them out. And so this is the thing. For me, I'm gonna let Christian run the 40 because for some reason Cody can also jump. Like Cody can jump really. So Cody's gonna do the verb, and Christian finally gets this moment. Again. Next up, go Cal, University of Georgia, strong safety. Okay, Christian get on the line. So Christian come out there, BJ, no shirt on, white tights with the.
Ben, what school do you have me attending?
I said University of Georgia.
I'm a proud Georgia State Panther, sir.
Hold on. You transferred. No. What happened was no. The coach said the wrong thing till you had to transfer. That's all I'm saying. This is you had to transfer. That's all I'm saying. No, but this is what I'm saying though. See, the reason why I'm giving Christian the 40 is this: Christian has certain images in his mind. Christian goes, "This is my moment. This is why I do what I do. I'm finna get on this line." And I'm going to take off. Christian, I don't know how the form is going to look, but I just want you to take off. And Cody got out 40. But if Christian, now we will say this, if Christian pulls a hammy, which we hope he doesn't, Kevin is the fill-in. Kevin's going to have to be the fill-in.
That's a sad state of affairs. If it gets to that.
No, you want to talk about a sad state of affairs. What are we doing if Ben's hurt and can't do the bench press?
That's also Kevin. Kevin is also
No, we're gonna do what Ben, a lot of people do, is we look at him and go, I choose not to do that event. Thank you.
You know what? We're gonna have to. No, that's it. If I get hurt and can't do it, man, we're gonna have to call in Rich. I mean, Rich got one in him. Come on, Rich.
Rich got one in him.
I believe in him too. I think he can have one rep there. Moving along to take two. If you were an NFL scout, and we've talked a lot about questions players get asked going into the background, what question are you asking a potential draft pick if you get one?
I think it'd be something like, are you comfortable openly disagreeing, with your position coach, with your coordinator, with your head coach? Look, man, friction makes fire. And if we're in a meeting room and I'm telling you something and you don't think that it's the right way of going about it, are you going to just say, all right, coach? Or are you going to say, hey, listen, look at this the other way? Or no, I don't agree with you. That doesn't mean you're being insubordinate, but are you okay with a little bit of back and forth? I mean, I think you need that. And Ben, I know you've talked a lot sometimes about kind of the difference in the communication process in the college game versus the pro game. And I think in the pros, you need guys to speak up in meetings. You need guys to, say, hey, I'm more comfortable with this schematic option than that schematic option. I think I need somebody. I want somebody that's willing to speak up, willing to contribute, willing to disagree with the coach.
For me, I mean, I know it's crazy because of the time we live in. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to say, listen, man, do you really want to play football or do you like what comes with it? Like tell me, because I want to know what I'm dealing with. Because you got two kinds of players. Aaron Donald, he wants to be a great football player. Like he's benefited for what comes with it, but he wants to be a great football player. There are players for whom they want to do TikTok before the game, during the game, after the game. They care more about their brand individually than the brand of football. So I'm asking them, I said, just tell me to my face, do you like social media or is it injected in your DNA? Like, is this what you do? Because the thing is, when Kingsbury, first got to Arizona, he said, we're going to initiate a cell phone break. Well, like a nicotine patch, you got to go out. I mean, go take 15 minutes because we're living in a different world now. If I look at you and go, if you look at me and go, Coach, I got 1 million followers. What? I already know. I already know what I'm dealing with, BJ. So for me, do you want to be a great player or do you want to be famous? Because they used to talk about that stuff because I want to know, am I dealing with a person that's good at football, but privately they want to get them followers up, or am I dealing with a guy who wants to be great on the football field for their teammate and you hopefully benefit that for the rest of your life? Because I just think now that's what you're dealing with more than anything. That's why guys, can't take feedback.
Yep.
Kevin, what's your question?
Mine would be, and this is, I think this would be, if I'm probably more position specific, was like, what do you like to do away from football? And this kind of falls in line with Ben. It's like, are you just?
What do you like to do? That would be my
answer.
I
was just saying, well, yeah, I would, because like, hey, I like to go rock climbing. Not as my starting DB, you don't. So it's like, just some of those things that I would like to know. It's like, what do you like to do away from? I like to go axe throwing. But let's not do that during the season. Wasn't it the Jags who was? Didn't they have more of their punters get injured, BJ? Because who was it? Jack Del Rio had hey, we're going to keep chopping wood, and had a log and an axe in the locker room, and the guy axed himself. It's like, okay.
Wasn't it Brian Angerer? Wasn't it Brian Angerer?
Something like that. Yeah, it's
I bet he was Angerer.
It's like, hey, if you like axe throwing, let's not do that during the season.
I mean, and Kevin, the thing is too, because look, I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna say, listen, you can't really. Oh my God, because you ask me these questions, you think to yourself, you like to drink a little bit? Yeah, I drank a little bit. Do you drink a little bit or do you drink a lot? I drank a lot. Now think about it. You drink a lot with no money.
Whoever tells you they drink a little bit, it means
they
drink
No. You have your own reserve spot.
No. Because the thing is this. Whatever you are with no money, it is amplified with money. So you drink a lot and you have no money yet. No.
Okay, well, tell me how this gets amplified, because I've had a few friends that have gone through the combine, and we've talked about this. One of them went through, and we were talking about this on Second Down. He said the weirdest question he got, which he thinks they just asked him to throw him off, they asked him if he used utensils when he ate rotisserie chicken.
They asked him that, and he said, I mean, look.
And he said no, and that was apparently the right answer.
No. I got asked.
You don't want defensive linemen that use utensils to eat the rotisserie chickens.
Oh, no. I got asked, sweet tea or iced tea? I said, well, iced tea is dirty water, so that would be sweet. Like, iced tea doesn't exist. Like, that's dirty water. And when I said that, they was like, you think that iced tea is dirty water? And I go, no, I know iced tea is dirty water. It's just cold.
I like it.
Yeah, iced tea is sweet tea with ice cubes in it. That's
no,
what
it's not up. No. Literally, up north, if you ask for iced tea, but it's the thing, though, Kevin. But it's the thing too. Now, if they would ask me how would I want my steak prepared, I probably would have got drafted.
Like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, if they ask you though,
if
Ben,
my cleat breaks, I can just strap this to the bottom
Ben,
and
if
it'll be
they
fine.
ask 20-year-old Ben Troop, do you use utensils when eating a rotisserie chicken? What's the answer?
I would be like, well, number one, I would have been like this. Utensils, you talking about knives and forks, right? I use these, man. I said, I'm from the South. I said, listen, I said, and at the end of the day, I said, the only reason why I don't lick my fingers is because I'm in front of you, gentlemen. I'm not going to lick my fingers in front of you. But if you walk out the door, I'm doing all that. So, and plus, I go, is rotisserie chicken the only chicken they got? That's the only thing on the menu? Well, I got to eat it. I ain't going to eat the skin, but all right, cool. I mean, that's all y'all got. I don't like rosemary. I like my chicken
you doing the house rub or are you doing the lemon pepper rub?
Listen, I like my chicken dead and deep fried. That's how I like my chicken. Right. So I'm just saying. But I take the lemon rub. That's all they got. Free chicken is always good chicken. Utensils. That's embarrassing.
Christian has got take 3 going for us.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I don't want to give you guys any chances to study and brush up on this. Today is National Grammar Day.
Oh, boy.
And so I have just some elementary school level questions for you guys. And I'm just curious, who wants to start? Let me
start. Get it on out the way. Come on.
Ben, you want to start? Ben?
Yep.
Ben?
I mean, to be fair, one of us on the show writes. So, I mean,
true.
Like every day. So he should know these.
Ben, what is a verb?
A verb is the opposite of a noun. A verb is in the adjective category. A verb is like a oh Lord. No. Oh, a verb is like going. Like it's like it's like doing something. You know? So
you said it. Action. It is an action word.
Descriptive action word.
That is well done. Kevin.
No.
Yes. What is a preposition?
That's what you do with your girlfriend, right? When you want to get married.
No one's laughing.
BJ, get your mind out of the gutter.
Why is it an engagement?
I know. He was giving me dirty. Like I was like, I can't believe you said that.
He's giving you dirty looks because you haven't answered what is a preposition yet.
I'm trying to, because there are prepositional phrases, right?
There sure are, Kevin. And those begin with a preposition.
I really don't remember, to be honest. Are there's like
I bet if we got one of your children on the line right now,
they would
be able
know.
to tell us.
I would hope they know. They go to school every day. I don't. Isn't it words like those and something like that?
BJ, do you want to steal this one?
I've long since forgot.
It's like a connective word.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Such as for and hints for.
About, below, inside, and to.
Yeah.
You're describing what it's doing.
Okay.
All right, BJ, we're going to get a little tougher with you. I got to do it. What is a coordinating conjunction?
I've never heard of that in my life.
What's a conjunction?
A word where you take two words and turn them into one.
It's a junction. What's your function?
You're close. It's a joining word like but or and or.
What was the first phrase you used?
Coordinating conjunction.
Yeah, I've literally never heard of that.
Connects two words or parts of a sentence. And, or but. So we all failed our grammar test. Congratulations. All your children are smarter than you when it comes to grammar here on National Grammar Day.
Good.
I mean,
DJ knows this and what limited things I've had to write. Like I don't know commas very well. We just just put commas in there.
See, but that's the thing, man. It's like all of you guys are good writers. All of you guys are good writers. And sometimes you can like do things you can't explain, or you're doing it and you don't know what you're doing it. That's when you're at your best, man.
I mean, yeah, if BJ, if I'm blessed enough, I write for Southern Pigskin like 3 times a year, not no more than that. And when I do it, when I write, everything is run on. There are no periods. There are no. BJ goes, you made one. I made.
Okay, no. But tell people why that is, because you're the only columnist in the history of sports who writes 1,000-word stories on your phone.
Listen, you just said I got to function in my element. Now this thing too. I was in the store one time and somebody was yelling. They was like, "What kind of statement was that?" I was like, "That's a declarative statement." They was like, "Yeah, interrogative, imperative."
Kevin, what's a possessive pronoun?
Mine is, when in doubt, just throw a comma in there. A possessive pronoun is a pronoun which declares possession, such
Okay,
such as theirs.
Like good, better, best, like that.
Kevin, spell the possessive form of theirs.
In this case, I want to try to do at least better than a standard Twitter post. I would say THEIRS.
Let's get out of here on the W, Cody. We're walking off the court with a bucket.
Almost couldn't breath in that last one. We've got more to come. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us here on this Thursday. ESPNCoastal.com. You can catch us live audio streaming, also live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well. We heard earlier this week from Alabama AD Greg Byrne talking about, hey, we plan moving ahead to plan to have a full stadium. Georgia AD Josh Brooks saying, quote, we have to plan for full stadiums. Let me make sure I get that quote right. He said, quote, we have to plan for full stadiums coming up in the fall. And so he becomes yet the latest to say that's kind of what we're anticipating. And we've seen other sports leagues. The Braves have their schedule out with promotions and things of that nature. We're seeing the NBA now in the second half. I saw the Atlanta Hawks today say, hey, you can buy single game tickets here in the second half to go see Atlanta Hawks games. It would appear, at least at the moment, that's the direction things are going, that fans slowly and surely going to be allowed back at the games. And by the time we get to fall, they're saying, look, we can't just say, well, we didn't think we'd get here, and now we have full. I think it's easier to say, hey, we're planning on having a full stadium, and if we have to roll that back, we have to roll it back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to plan for all possibilities. One of the major challenges of this has been just the inability to predict the future and kind of develop a fixed timeline. You're responsive to so much information and so many trends that are out there. I think for me, it makes sense in terms of decision making and sort of rules and guidelines to follow the medical expertise. To go with whatever set of parameters or whatever potential timetable. The doctors, and I'm epidemiologist, I believe, is a viral doctor. I think it makes sense to follow their guidance, follow their leadership, kind of trust their judgment as they are experts clearly on something that most of us are just now kind of even thinking about for the first time in our minds over the last year. So yeah, I think there's reason to be cautiously optimistic. I think there's reason to be hopeful. I think there's reason to look down the line and in our minds fathom an environment that's close to what we were accustomed to. But I also think within that optimism, within that hope, you got to make sure you're following the medical guidelines. You're moving at a pace that doctors and, again, medical leaders suggest and want. I think sometimes, I said this yesterday on the show, when we think about the fall, we kind of feel like we're in the fall indirectly because on the show, we always talk college football. I'm always thinking college football constantly. It's it's March 4th. So we're in early March. I mean, we're a long way away from September, October, November. Hopefully we're in a much better place with vaccines and just with the caseload, et cetera. But yeah, I think there's reason to be optimistic. You got to plan for everything, but I would absolutely follow the guidance and directives of the medical personnel.
I mean, I was saying this yesterday, Kevin. I knew it was going to be a trickle-down effect. I mean, I look at what else can the AD at Georgia say? What else can Josh Brooks say when I guarantee you their emails and phones have been going off the hook when you talk about the fact they saying, well, look at what the AD at Alabama said. But BJ, I think you said it best. If I go back to the Super Bowl, when I look at the people that were able to be in the stands, they had masks on, right? So if you're Josh Byrne, if you're Josh Brooks or the AD at Alabama, you're saying to yourself, this is going to have to be a group effort. When I say a group, I mean the people that want to attend have to be willing to deal with the protocols that we put in place. So if indeed we're going to have full stadiums and it is a mask mandate in the stadium, it might not be a mask mandate in your state by the time we get to the regular season, you either willing to do it or not come to the games, because the thing about these ADs is in the back of their mind, I don't want to cause a spread. I want football, and obviously I want to have full stadium, but I'm not getting political by any means, but if the president says we're going to have everybody, we're going to have vaccination for every American by the end of May, right? That means that people have probably got more access to it, because I'm just thinking about the fact that if I'm an AD, you're talking about making decisions. When somebody says we have to plan for full stadiums, you know what somebody agree with that? They're going to have full stadiums. They take out to have the plan for them. They say, hey, they're going to have full. No, that's not what he's saying. We're planning on it. And BJ, I do hope that we're in a much, better place, by the time the fall comes. But you're asking people to change their behaviors in order for us to have these things when their only affiliation with your team is their love for it. They're paying tickets to be in the stadium. It's not like the players and the coaches and the medical staff. But like I said, if I'm an AD, what else can I got to say something, because the fans have not seen their favorite team. And college football people, for those of you who don't know, that's fanatics for real. We ain't talking about the Braves or the Hawks or the Falcons. They want to see Alabama. And the last thing you want to do is your rival or the team you play to get to do something as a fan base that you can't do. That's not going to bode well.
Yeah, and again, I think it's obviously a work in progress, but you're seeing some things in the last few weeks change in terms of allowing fans at games. We did see fans at games this past fall in SEC games in a lot of spots as well. So I think just saying, look, we're planning on having folks there. I don't think there's anything wrong with them saying that. It's like, hey, it's a plan. That's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. And the way things are going, potentially we see this thing being moving in the right direction. We'll continue to monitor, but for now, obviously, I think a lot of these schools would enjoy having people there. If you read some of the articles about professional teams and things of that nature with nobody there, I think I saw the article this week. The Braves said they lost something like $300 million in 2020 from just having no fans at their games. So I think that's something that you're going to, as Ben said, probably hear more of as we move forward with this thing. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll take an interesting in-depth look here at some SEC trios in 2021. Who are some of those dangerous threesomes we are going to see on SEC rosters here on Saturdays in the fall? It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you were with us here on the show. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, at Pigskin Radio. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well. Here on the show, we'll chat with Bud Ellis coming up in just a little bit. We'll talk some Braves baseball with him coming up at the top of next hour. But first, want to look at some SEC trios that are going to be just loads to handle here in the fall. And Christian is saying, look, who are 3 guys on certain teams? We're going to get one each here that you have to plan for, you have to scheme for, and they can still beat you regardless of all of that.
Yeah, and the general exercise wasn't saying they have a really good quarterback, a really good defensive end, and they have a hell of a safety, so that team's really good. It's like, no, I need 3 guys that are going to work in some sort of conjunction together that are going to be an amazing trio, right? You think back to last year, it was Mac Jones, Najee Harris, and Devonta Smith on Alabama that were an unbelievable trio, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of people are looking at Georgia's wide receiver core with George Pickens, Jermaine Burton, and call him a pass catcher, Darnell Washington, or if you want to put Kyrus Jackson in there as the third. Trios of guys that are going to change the landscape of the SEC and really shape this coming season.
You want me to go first? Oh, okay. I was waiting on you to give your 3. I'm going to go with South Carolina, and I have kind of a non-traditional corresponsive trio. I'm going to go with a running back and 2 edge rushers. And the reason I think they work together is because I think they are the totality and the focal point of what South Carolina's game plan is going to be for this fall. At this point, South Carolina has a lot of questions at quarterback, a lot of questions in the passing game, a lot of questions in the secondary. I think what you're going to see South Carolina try to do is play defense with their offense, run the ball, run it, control the clock, control the tempo, and then when they do get on defense, just attack, because they're very young in the secondary. So for me, South Carolina's trio in this regard, and I think it's one of the best in the country, is running back Kevin Harris, defensive end Kingsley Enagbare, and edge rusher Jordan Strawn. And you may be saying, who's Jordan Strawn? I don't remember him from last year. Well, that's because he didn't play for South Carolina last year. He played for Georgia State, and he led the nation in sacks. Jordan Strawn had 10.5 sacks last year for Georgia State. That was number 1 in the country. He now comes over to South Carolina and will play one end, whereas Enagbare will play the other end. Enagbare is the leading returner with 6 sacks of all SEC defensive linemen from a year ago. So he is the best returning defensive line edge rusher in the SEC, and the Gamecocks get him on one side and get Jordan Strawn, who played football at Camden County, by the way, on the other side. And I think they're going to attack, get after those guys. That might be the best pass rushing tandem in the country. They're going to get after those new guys at quarterback in the SEC, and then when they're on offense, they're going to run the football, milk the clock. And few did it better last year than Kevin Harris, and that's a young man out of Bradwell Institute. Kevin Harris last year, 1,138 yards. This was in 10 games, by the way, and 15 touchdowns. That's over 6 yards per carry. We have not seen seasons like that many times, even in recent SEC history. So I think the focal point of South Carolina's season is going to be run the football, ball control, attack defensively. And in terms of a trio from that philosophy, it doesn't get any better than running back Kevin Harris and edge rushers Kingsley Enagbare and Jordan Strawn.
For me, BJ, I'm going to go with Ole Miss, and the reason why is, when you look at what Matt Corral brings to the table, one of 3 quarterbacks last year to go for over 3,000 yards, passing 25 touchdowns. Yes, he's going to have to cut down on his mistakes and turnovers, but Jerrion Ely is a guy that's definitely going to have a lot to do with that. They do it all, running back that can definitely catch the ball out the backfield. And my third of that trio is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is synonymous with one side of the football. He has to have a quarterback that can make it all come together. A lot of times when it comes to these guys, like Lane Kiffin is back in the SEC to do his own version of the air raid, but he got to have a quarterback that can get it done. I know Christian is looking probably over there, but let me break it down for a second. Lane Kiffin is a mastermind, right? Lane Kiffin is a mastermind at the offensive side of the football. You have to have a quarterback that can do 2 things. One, push the ball down the field and utilize his legs, but he's going to have to add a third dimension. He's going to have to be, Lane Kiffin on the field. The thing is, when I was trying to do the trios, I don't like to think like BJ, and I know Christian is saying we need 3 players. No,
we do. He was talking about on the field. Lane can't be on the field.
He
There's a penalty if he's on the field.
Whoa. I don't remember anybody saying you can't use a coach.
I'm just saying, when I'm thinking about Ole Miss and what they want to do next year, man, they're gonna have to light it up on offense because that defense
Apparently, Chris is gonna have to print out a congressional bill to explain the rundown every day to cover all the ins and outs.
By that definition, I also didn't put fan bases. So with the dogs, you gotta put Pickens, Nakobe Dean, and the Georgia fan base because it's going to be hell coming into Sanford Stadium. It's SEC trios. I asked for 3 players, BJ.
Well, okay, and to be fair, I gave you Kingsley Enagbare, Jordan Strawn, and Kevin Harris.
You did follow the script, I guess.
But don't defend this, is my point.
No, I think what we need is more outside of the box thinking. I love that idea. When you talk about a Percy Harvin type player,
I mean, they're gonna go as the offensive mind of Lane Kiffin takes.
Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin. I love that.
0 stats this year.
Listen,
and Lane Kiffin is probably more important than either of them.
That's fine. If we want to do a coach's power rankings with offensive and defensive coordinators, we'll do that tomorrow. We'll tease that right now. I will tease that right now. We will power rank coaches and coordinators, Ben.
Do it.
But I need a third player. You don't get to skate using Lane Kiffin.
Okay, if I got to do a third player for Ole Miss, I'm just going to give you another squad because I don't know if they got another player outside those 2 guys. So listen, I'm going to go Texas A&M with Isaiah Spiller, Devin Ashawn, and Aeneas Smith. I mean, these going to be 3 running backs.
If you mentioned Jimbo Fisher there, I was going to jump through the computer.
I wasn't going to do Jimbo Fisher. I mean, when you talk about Texas A&M will go as the running game goes next year. I know they got 2 big-time tight ends, but for me, Isaiah Spiller, who's definitely going to tote the rock, Devin Ashawn, Aeneas Smith. And I look at the fact that 2 people talking about Jimbo Fisher, and I'm just saying what he wants to do on offense. He wants to let the running game open up for the passing game. These 3 gentlemen are going to have a lot to do with that. So for me, Isaiah Spiller, Devin Ashawn, Aeneas Smith, them Texas A&M boys, and I ain't even get to the tight ends. Sorry that I want to put Lane Kiffin for them over boys.
That second answer was producer approved for the show. I will say.
Am I in the wrong?
No, I know you're not in the wrong. I promise you. You're
no, hold on. Listen, I did.
I don't like the fact that our speech has to meet the pre-approved status quo. Like, I mean,
to answer the question.
But we're answering the question through our own frames of reference.
No, but you're not. You're not. You're adding stuff to the question. I mean, right? That's what.
Kevin. When I look at Alabama, I look at potentially Bryce Young, and I
Nick
look.
Saban.
Well, no, I look at LeBron Ray on the other side, but also I look at the history at Alabama. Other teams have to face that history and the pressure of playing Alabama. So those are my 3, Kevin.
I mean, the players change, the coaches change, the success doesn't. I agree with you.
You know what else I'm gonna put out there?
Alabama. It's Nick Saban, Ghosts, and Houndstooth. That's why they win.
Justin Shorter. The Gator Scales uniform, because those things are horrifying to play against.
True indeed. I agree. I'll almost beat Texas A&M in them. Felipe Frank, 70-yard scramble. But Jim McElwain was the coach, so it wasn't going to matter.
Any other great combos you want to throw out there? No, they all went offense. I'll go
I'm thinking Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, whoever plays quarterback, and lack of expectations are 3 things you got to watch out for with the Commodores.
Okay, while we're calling people out for saying inaccurate things, I literally picked 2 defensive ends, and Kevin just started his segment with, well, they all went offense.
He did.
No one's claiming Kevin's perfect either. See, there you go, adding words again.
Got me all flustered with the exercise here. I will go all defense.
Kevin, you usually do get flustered by exercise.
Yes, that is. That is a great point. I went with it goes through Alabama, right? So it goes through Alabama on defense. Christian Harris, DJ Dale, LeBron Ray, man. I think 2 guys up front, 1 guy that's going to be coming down at you through the middle there at the linebacker spot. I can't think of a much better trio there on the defensive side of the ball is going to be causing problems for people on Saturdays, and those 3 right there.
Ben, for Florida, who's the trio you think needs to step up, though? In all seriousness, for you, because everyone's talking about Georgia as the preseason favorite. For you, who needs to be the favorite of that team? What trio needs to step up?
Brenton Cox, Zachary Carter, and Kyrie Elam. I mean, you need your two guys. You need your guy in the middle. You need your guy on the outside that was a 5-star, and you need your lockdown corner to go out there and be able to take away the other team's number one receiver, so the rest of your other 10 guys can eat. So for me, Kyrie, who's going to be preseason first team All SEC, Zachary Carter, a guy that came back for another year. He says unfinished business, and Brenton Cox, a guy who started out at Georgia, came over to Florida. We want to see if he is as good as his them 5 stars next to his name.
I mean, but in all seriousness, though, Christian, you said, well, Georgia's fair. I mean, you did a trio, did not mention JT Daniels. I think if I had a trio written down, did not have JT Daniels there. I think Georgia needs other guys to step up, not necessarily say, hey, it's the quarterback or bust. To achieve our goals. Obviously, some of that has to do with him. You know, if I put George Pickens and Kearis Jackson as my trio, he's got to get him the ball. But I don't know if he's got to be otherworldly for them to accomplish their goals, right? I mean, if he can get those two guys.
Depends on what you're stating Georgia's goal is. If Georgia's goal is to win the SEC East, maybe not. Maybe JT Daniels can be average and Georgia wins the SEC East. But I think if it's to win the SEC and go to the college football playoff, he's going to have to be above average.
Well, I'm not saying he needs to be below average. I'm saying, does he need to be? You just play out of his mind and put up ridiculous stats.
If Georgia's going to win a national championship, yes.
Week in and week out, I don't know if that's just. I mean,
well, the national championship isn't week in and week out. It's 3 or 4 crucial games throughout the season that you're going to have to win. I was talking about this with Cody on Second Down. It's Clemson at the beginning, kind of a lull in the schedule. Florida, lull in the schedule. SEC championship. Those are 3 games you're probably going to need to win. I'd say you can maybe lose to Clemson and still get in, but you need to win those 3 games. He's going to have to play out of his mind if he's going to do that. I mean, Georgia still has not beaten Alabama, and that's probably going to be the team that you're going to have to get past in the SEC championship. And BJ, there have been some incredible performances by Georgia quarterbacks against Alabama. Aaron Murray, Jake Fromm have had great performances. They haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I still look at proficiency over production. Like to me, a 400-yard passing game is not necessarily a good game, especially when you look at the opportunity costs. I still think every play that is evaluated has to be compared and contrast to every play that could have been replacing the play that we're looking at. And I think an offense where Georgia has a lot of incompletions, maybe a turnover or 2 through the air, really concerns me. I think a powerful downhill running attack, which had Georgia a blown coverage away from a national championship a handful of years ago, is still the preeminent and most prominent way to win a national championship. I do agree that situationally you're going to need great proficiency and maybe some prolific numbers from JT Daniels. But to me, I would not evaluate Georgia's offensive success through macro passing stats.
Ben, if Alabama decides in their meetings, Golding and Saban decide in their meetings, Georgia makes it to the SEC championship and they're playing Alabama. If they decide we're going to sell out to stop the run, if they decide to do that, they're going to do that, right?
Oh yeah, they just
Georgia can't enforce their will against a 9-man box.
I mean, if they decide they're going to stop the run, that means that number one, that means that they don't think JT Daniels can beat them throwing the football. And the whole thing about it is what hasn't happened for Georgia in the past doesn't have a lot to do with what Georgia's going to do currently. But the fact of the matter is they had an air raid in the bowl game and they had to scratch and claw to get the dub. I do think JT Daniels can definitely make Coach Monkey look better than what he actually wants to do on offense. I do think he wants to be more balanced, but you got to justify, JT Daniels being the guy coming up from. He did not come from USC to hand the ball off. Bottom line, he just did not. So you're going to be able to say, okay, we're going to run our offense from the pass down to the run, and then the thing is, when you talk about those running backs, those guys got to be efficient enough. I mean, they got to be patient enough to know we're not going to be the focal point, because when players go into a meeting, they want to know, what are we doing? We running the football, or we throwing the football? You can't say, well, you're going to throw it, because arguably your best group, take nothing away from the running backs, is your receiving core. Take nothing away from the running backs. And you had a year last year that you won in spite of the running game. Now, can you get back to it? Yes, but just like I know, Christian, you want your offensive lineman to thrive at one thing. If they thrive at backing up and not pushing guys, go with the passing game, but you let the run game come when it comes.
Hey, and quickly, Kevin, I just think in big games now, as we're talking about what the goal for Georgia is, if you're going to have to win big games, I think you have to set, no matter how good your defense is and how much you can run the football, you have to set the barometer at, we have to score at least 30 points if we're going to win this game. There's not going to be any more 24-17 national championships. You're going to have to score no matter how good your defense is.
Sure, I understand that. I certainly understand that. And I wasn't trying to downplay that with JT Daniels. I was saying if you get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, coupled with a Zamir White, I think you'll give plenty of teams plenty of headaches, and the W's will be there at the end. We'll come back. More to come. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Final hour right around the corner. We'll talk with Bud Ellis, BravesWire.com, about the Braves and how they're going so far in spring. Max Fried going to be scratched tomorrow from his start from a possible COVID exposure. Has not tested positive, but not going to pitch due to a possible exposure. We'll mention JT Daniels last segment. Well, how good can JT Daniels be? Could he be this year's Mac Jones? Bill Connolly thinks so. We'll look at his column on that, and JT Daniels will also look at who is really going to have to buckle it up in 2021 with some just absolute brutal stretches on the schedule. We'll look at that coming up the final hour as well, as the Braves continue there at spring training, and again, counted down towards the start of the season. Bud Ellis will join us, and obviously plenty of questions there with the Atlanta Braves for us to get into there with Bud from a pitching standpoint, catching standpoint. Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna, how are those guys looking here early on? We'll get to that when we come back with Bud Ellis. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com on your mobile device with the ESPN app. If you miss any portion of the show, you can go get a podcasted version, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube as well. Final hour of the show coming up next. It is 3 and Out on this Thursday afternoon, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final hour here of 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here on the show. We'll look at JT Daniels. Could he be this year's Mac Jones? Bill Connolly thinks so with ESPN.com, ESPN Plus. We'll debate that coming up just a little bit. Also looking at who's got some tough stretches in college football, maybe the toughest stretches out there in college football in 2021. We'll get to that in about 30 minutes here on the show, but we're about 5 days into spring training here with the Atlanta Braves. And joining us here from Braves Wire, good friend of the show, Bud Ellis joins us. Bud, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, boys. Hard to believe that 4 weeks from right now, the Braves and the Phillies will be getting it on in the city of brotherly love to kick off the 2021 season, a season that we are hopeful will be somewhat more resemblant of what we're used to with baseball, starting with 162 games.
Certainly appears that we are headed that way, and excited about that. But obviously, not does a week of baseball games a definitive statement make. But Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley, a couple of guys really off to hot starts there in spring.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody who has social media accounts saw the workouts that Ronnie was doing down in Venezuela in the off season, and by all reports, he showed up at camp in maybe even a little bit of a better shape than he's been in years past. And certainly, you look at a guy like that, and we remember 2 years ago in the 2019 season, 41 homers, 37 stolen bases. He's one of those dynamic players that can change the game. He's every at bat is must see TV. He's the ultimate 5-tool player. And I tell you what, I'm really intrigued to see him in right field this year, because if you remember, he played a little bit of right field in 2018 and 2019. And even in a small sample size, he made a big difference with his arm. And you think about the way that he can impact a game, and having him in right field with most likely the super prospect Christian Pache in center field. We've talked a lot about Marcell Ozuna is not the greatest defensive outfielder in the world, but if you've got to have Marcell Ozuna in one corner, it's pretty good to have Christian Pache and Ronald Acuna covering the other 75% of the outfield for you.
But Ronald Acuna has been one of baseball's biggest stars now for some time, and we kind of just chalk up and assume all these numbers. In your mind, what's a realistic stat line for him in 2021?
Man, I tell you, it's enticing, BJ, because I look at this kid and I think to myself, even in the short sample size of last year, I thought he did a better job at the plate of being a little more selective, right? His walk rate went up. His OPS was at 987. Granted, that's over 46 games, but over the course of him playing, say, 155 out of 162, I mean, I think it's plausible this guy, at 20, 24 years old is going to be a guy, or just turned 23 actually. Here's the guy that I think could hit between 290 and 300, could slug somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,050, 45 homers, 35 steals. Hitting in the leadoff spot probably decreases his RBIs a little bit, but still the opportunity to drive in 100 runs. I mean, it's cliche to say the sky's the limit, but as a baseball guy, I think about getting to watch Ronald Acuna Jr. every day. And then I think about other young transcendent stars such as Juan Soto in Washington, Fernando Tatis Jr. in San Diego. And it's no surprise those three were grouped together 5, 6, and 7 in MLB Network's top 100 baseball players right now. I think that at some point in time, I think Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to hit 315, 320 in the major leagues. I'm not sure it'll be this year yet, but it's scary to think just how good this kid can be and what he's already accomplished in 3 seasons.
And Buzz, you mentioned earlier, Christian Pache, obviously, I think it's his job to lose for center field. But Ender has come out publicly and said, I want to still prove to this team that I can still be a focal point defensively. Do you think that bodes well for Christian? I still think it's his, but it's got to be good knowing that Snicker said this. I'm not saying it's a position battle, but you got a young guy trying to prove himself and an old veteran trying to prove to his team that I can still be a valuable asset.
Yeah, it's that classic situation we see in sports, right, Ben? So I wrote last night on Braves Wire that, the Braves aren't going to come out in February and just hand Christian Pache the starting job. He's got, 26 major league at bats, 4 in the regular season, 22 in the postseason. But look, let's not make any mistake about it. Center field is Christian Pache's to lose. The game on Monday was on TV, and you see the 22-year-old kid go up there. The one question about him is the hit tool, and he gets a slider on the outer half of the plate, and he drives it with authority to right center field and got robbed of what would have been a home run. 4 for 22 last year against the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman joked about, what it would be like if he had been 21 years old, and then they'd just say, hey, you got to go play every day in the NLCS against the best team in baseball, and how nerve-wracking that would be. Pache only struck out in 4 of those at-bats. He had a hit and an RBI in the first 4 games that he played in that NLCS. He hit a home run. He robbed a home run, made every catch effortlessly in center field. Guys, the more I watch Christian and the way he's developed, his upper body strength, his hit tool has come along the past couple of years. He's long been the best defensive prospect in the entire organization, for 2 or 3 years now. The hit tool's finally come, and I think his time has come. I'm glad that Ender is coming in with the mindset of competing for the job, and I am a big Ender Inciarte fan. I think he has done some great things for the Braves, but he's not the player that he was 2 years ago. I'm not sure if he didn't have that $8.7 million price tag attached to him, if he'd be one of the 26 guys going north to Philadelphia in 4 weeks, and he may not be anyway. But this is Christian Pache's job to lose in camp, and I don't think he's going to lose it. I think he's here, and I think he's here to stay for a long, long time.
Bud Ellis, BravesWire.com, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Bud, for the last, 4 or 5 years, it's been rotation there at catcher. Tyler Flowers been hanging around there as well. You got Travis d'Arnaud, but I said coming into this season, hey, it's time for the Braves to let somebody come up and develop. Is that Alex Jackson? Is it Contreras? Where do you think the Braves are leaning there at catcher, and how important does that role kind of become? Because it's often, not talked about, knowing that d'Arnaud can't catch 162 games.
Right, and traditionally the Braves have done a great job of kind of splitting the catching duties, over the last 5 or 6 years in particular. You think about, you don't want to wear a catcher down catching in the Atlanta Heat all summer, but Travis d'Arnaud is too good to be in a pure platoon. He's going to start 125 to 135 games if he's healthy. Now, if you had asked me 3 or 4 days ago, I think I still would have leaned toward Alex Jackson getting the nod, only because I want William Contreras playing every day at Gwinnett. Well, then we find out the AAA season is now going to be delayed until the first week of May. So with that said, I think I'm 50-50 right now. I could very easily see them giving William Contreras the nod as the backup catcher on opening day. And long-term, that might not be a bad thing. Let him be in the major leagues for a month. Let him get 1 or 2 starts a week. There's a scattering of off days, I think 4 in the first 14 days. So Contreras might not get to play a whole lot after not playing last year because of COVID. I think guys like Contreras, Drew Waters, and so forth need to be at Gwinnett getting every day at bats. But, to me, they could get by definitely with Alex Jackson as the backup, because let's face it, if Travis d'Arnaud, if something happens to him, William Contreras is going to be up here as the everyday catcher while d'Arnaud would be out.
Bud, how do you see the back end of this rotation thing shaking out? And is what we're seeing in spring training going to impact that, or is it already kind of at least in some respects settled?
Yeah, when I look at the back end of the rotation, look, is Mike Soroka going to start the season? Probably not. And I think that's right. They should slow play this. He's one of your foundational pillars. He's coming off the Achilles injury. The Achilles is fine, but the rest of the lower body has to catch up. And you certainly have the pitching depth. You also have those 4 off days in the first 2 weeks, like I mentioned. You theoretically could get by with a 4-man rotation if you really wanted to. But, once Soroka's back, and I would think that's probably toward the end of April, then you're looking at, the back, you're looking at Soroka, Fried, Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson, and Drew Smiley in some order. I tell you what, that's a pretty good 5 to have. Smiley, to me, is the wild card. They went out, they signed him early in the free agent period, $11 million 1-year deal. He only pitched 26 and a third innings in San Francisco last year, but much like Travis d'Arnaud, the Braves saw something in d'Arnaud's final 3 or 4 months in Tampa Bay in 2019 and decided to bring him in, and it worked out obviously great last year. Drew Smiley, had a 14.4 strikeout per 9 inning ratio with the Giants last year. He made some mechanical adjustments after he got healthy down the stretch in Philadelphia in 2019, pitched pretty well, pitched really well with the Giants. I think Drew Smiley is a guy that, I know everybody wants to see Kyle Wright. Everybody wants to see Bryce Wilson. Wilson looked actually pretty good today in his first spring outing, 2 innings against Pittsburgh. But, when I think of the rotation 1 through 5, I see a group that's deep, that's experienced, and you might say, well, you've got 3 young pitchers in there, but how can they be experienced? But I mean, Ian Anderson made 4 postseason starts last year. You handed him the ball in Game 7 of the NLCS. We all know what Max Fried's been able to do. Now, Fried can't make his start tomorrow because he has been exposed to someone who potentially has COVID. So they're going to backtrack him for a few days, most likely. But when I look at this rotation 1 through 5, last year, this was the weakness of this team. This rotation may end up being the strongest aspect of this team this year. It could be that good.
But I mean, obviously, when you talk about a team that has a great blend of young talent and Ronald Acuna, old veterans, guys like Freddie Free. I think about a guy like Austin Riley. I mean, we talk about Christian Pache and it being his job to lose in center field. Is Austin Riley ready for the big time, starting every day at third?
Well, I've got a piece I think I'm going to write in the next week or so. It feels like there's a referendum on Austin Riley, right? He came out 2019. He destroyed the league for 6 weeks, and then he couldn't hit a breaking ball to save his life. Last year, he did a much better job on the off-speed stuff, but his ground ball rate went up from 26.2% to 41.7%, and his hard hit percentage dropped nearly 10 points. And he was late on the fastball a lot, so it was like he almost overcompensated. And I've heard Austin talk here in camp about trying to find that happy medium. And what I would say to that is, you're talking about a kid that's got 462 career at bats. I mean, he turns 24 years old the day after the season starts. I don't think you can say anything definitive about Austin Riley. Sure, I know the part of the fan base that wanted Nolan Arenado or would love Matt Chapman if he's available, which he's not, or would love Jose Ramirez if he's available, which he most likely isn't either. I tell you what, it's hard to balance hey, can this guy play in the majors every day when you're in a situation where you have a realistic shot to win the World Series, which the Braves are part of that small group now that can legitimately say that. But what I hope for, what I'd like to see is for the Braves to just run Austin Riley out there every day. They signed Jake Lamb, a veteran left-handed stick who's good against right-handers. If Austin gets in one of those funks, they can give him a break here or there, let Jake play third, but pretty much leave Austin Riley alone at third base, let him hit 7th in the lineup every day. And I think you'll see that progression of kind of finding that happy medium between what we saw in 2019 and what we saw in 2020.
Bud Ellis joining us here on 3 and Out. Bud, finally, as you look at the way this team is at least constructed, the starting lineup looks good. The bench, as you said, still a work in progress. We'll see what the bullpen pieces shape up to be. But I think last year we saw the Braves for the first time put together, and I think the short season obviously helped with that, but were put together to be a playoff team, right? I mean, they, not necessarily a regular season team, but they were set up to be a postseason series team where, hey, if we get a best of 5, we're set up to beat you. Are they still set up that way, or are they more of the 162 where, hey, over the course, we're going to beat you, maybe in a 7-gamer we get stuck? Are they still set up for the postseason in your estimation with what they're going to have to go through here in 2021?
Kev, I think they are. The caveat with this is they play in the toughest division in baseball, and the NL East is going to be fascinating to watch, especially when you consider some of the upgrades that have been made. You look at the Mets bringing in Francisco Lindor, Carlos Carrasco, the additions they made to their bullpen. If the Phillies can kind of get out of their own way, the talent is there. We'll see if their bullpen can't be any worse than it was a year ago. And I tell you what, the Nationals with Soto and Turner in that lineup, they may not be able to catch the baseball, but if they can keep those horses in their rotation healthy, you figure they're going to be there at the end as well. But the Braves have the depth. The Braves have the sheer talent. They have I believe they have the pieces to kind of, put the rest of the bullpen together with what they have in camp. I wrote a little bit about that last night. And the thing that they have now is they have the experience. Yes, in 2019, they basically choked that division series against the Cardinals. Last year, they found a way to win not one, but 2 playoff series and took the best team in baseball, maybe the best team we've seen in baseball in the last 5 years, to the 7th game of the NLCS. So they've learned how to win in October now. So I think they're well set up to do both. The thing is, without the expanded playoffs, which seems to be a dead-on arrival issue now, according to published reports, if you don't win your division, you're in that one-game playoff, and you're most likely playing either San Diego or the Dodgers. And I don't think anybody wants that in October.
No part of that in a one-game series for sure. Bud Ellis, BravesWire.com, our guest here on a 3 and Out, and a month away from opening day. Bud, we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Take care.
Appreciate it. Bud Ellis joining us here on a 3 and Out. More to come all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Can JT Daniels be Mac Jones in 2021? We'll debate that next here on 3 and Out. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, a salty Christian Gokel here with you on this Thursday. Looking at ESPN, Bill Connolly, obviously covering college football. ESPN Plus has a story up. Could or can JT Daniels be this year's Mac Jones? From the article, quote, long mark for greatness, Daniels is the most obvious successor in the Burrow-Jones late season brilliance to full season domination line. Is he, Joe Burrow had Chase, Jefferson, Edwards-Helaire, Marshall, Moss. Jones had Smith, Waddle, Harris. Does Georgia's talent stack up to that to allow them to JT Daniels to become that Mac Jones guy where, hey, all of a sudden in one season he becomes one of the best quarterbacks in college football?
Yeah, I don't know that if you're talking about being the next Joe Burrow and Mac Jones, you're talking about being one of the best quarterbacks in college football. You're talking about being one of the best quarterbacks in college football history. That's a tall standard. Not only did Burrow and Jones both go undefeated and win national championships, they both set a new single season college football passer rating record as well. So I think if the standard for JT Daniels is you got to go undefeated, win the national championship, and set a new passer rating record, that's a lot. Now, I do agree with Bill's premise, of course, and that is he's talking about success the previous November translating into next level top tier play the next fall. A lot of people forget about Joe Burrow. People make the mistake in saying, oh man, 2019, Joe Burrow just came out of nowhere. And you forget that the fall prior, Joe Burrow had a game where he scored 8 touchdowns and had 500 yards against Texas A&M, and a game where he was essentially unstoppable against Central Florida in the Fiesta Bowl and snapped the nation's longest winning streak. So Joe Burrow had a couple of elite performances to kind of stabilize his 2019 before he ever made it to the season. And you think about Mac Jones in the Iron Bowl, the 4 touchdown passes in the Iron Bowl, not many people have done that. So I think when you look at JT Daniels November, right, the first start against Mississippi State, 401 yards and 4 touchdowns. The South Carolina game, Georgia ran the football really well, but still he was proficient. Against Missouri, 299 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Against Cincinnati, 392 yards passing, a touchdown. In the month of November and the bowl game, had 10 passing touchdowns and 2 picks. So if you look at that as kind of a springboard or a segue or a kind of preview of things to come, yeah, it makes sense. I think Daniels is poised for stardom. I do think that the trajectory, right, of a month leading into a big year makes sense for Daniels. But I think saying that, the expectations should be Burrow or Jones-esque, that is a lot.
You want to know why it's hard to go to the University of Georgia and play quarterback? Because of expectations like this. I know that JT Daniels has nothing to do with these type of expectations, but he's a guy that came from USC for a reason. Now, you talk about the supporting cast, because you talk about Mac Jones, you talk about Najee Harris, you talk about Smith and Mechie and Waddle. Waddle got hurt, and then Mac Jones still went out there and did what he did, still went undefeated. But you got to look at what his supporting cast did. And then we talk about the whole situation with Joe Burrow. I mean, Chase, he went out there and won the Blitnikoff. Jefferson had 5 touchdowns in the first half. Marshall had double-digit touchdowns. Randy Moss' son Thaddeus was a starting tight end, and he didn't even get drafted. Oh, you still got Clyde Edwards-Helaire who had 1,500 yards plus 50 catches. This is the reason why it's lofty expectations. Georgia has had one 1,000-yard receiver in their existence. One. Terrence Edwards, 1. Now, you're finna go from 1 to potentially almost 3 guys. So Pickens, and Burton got to go over 1,000. With Pickens winning the Blitnikoff, and then if you're going to add in Mac Jones, one of them got to win the Heisman because Devonta Smith won the Heisman. And then Kearis Jackson, he got to have double-digit touchdowns. I do think Darnell Washington is a better option than a guy like than Moss, BJ. But the thing is, you know what Moss did every time they threw in the ball? He caught it, because just like I said about my man Austin Hooper, he's getting 1-on-1 coverage every single time. But it's the thing. The 1,500 yards from Clyde Edwards-Helaire was one thing. Najee Harris had over 20 touchdowns last year. All I'm saying is when you go to big-time schools with unlimited infrastructure, 5-star recruits, top 2 or 3 recruiting classes, this is the expectation. The thing about it is these other guys, they had something to compare themselves to. Mac Jones, he's looking up at 2 and all these guys. I think it's in him to do it, Kevin. I just think that this is why I don't like comparisons either. Hey, man, you think you could be the next Mac Jones? Well, what about Joe Burrow? What? That's my comp?
But again, I said Joe Burrow was doing it in the playoffs against top 25 talent coming in. I mean, Mac Jones, or excuse me, not Mac Jones, JT Daniels down the stretch. Outside of Cincinnati, I mean, it was pretty weak part of the SEC, right? That he was going out and competing against by and large, right? It wasn't.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean,
how do you when you say, hey, he's the next Mac Jones and Joe Burrow? I mean, those guys finished the season against top 15 type teams. JT Daniels really had one showing that was in the bowl game. I mean, not his fault, but again, you're taking and extrapolating his performances against, let's face it, some middling SEC teams and below average teams last year, and saying based on that, he's going to be, elite and take Georgia to the next level.
Yeah, but I also think, he wasn't ready to play, healthy, cleared, whatever, the number one guy, whatever the phraseology is, he wasn't there for Alabama and Florida. And that's a fair criticism. But I also think we're not giving the win in the Peach Bowl enough credit. And I know Georgia wasn't incredible offensively, but Daniels still threw for 392 yards and a score, still made, even if they were the easy throws, still made the smart right throws to move Georgia down the field against a prevent defense. And he did it against a team that was number 6 in the country. I mean, Cincinnati was an elite team last year. A lot of people felt like they were a college football playoff team. And maybe they should have been. And you threw for almost 400 yards. That defense was top 10 in the country. That defense has multiple guys on the defensive line that are going to get drafted. That defense had its defensive coordinator get hired by, if I have this right, LSU and then Notre Dame. Yeah, but I think it was LSU first and then went to Notre Dame, or he was on the verge of going to LSU and then went to Notre Dame. So you did it against an elite defensive coordinator. If you're JT Daniels, you did it against an elite defense, a top 10 defense, and you went for almost 400 yards. So I agree he has not done it against Florida or Alabama. I agree. But I think we also need to give that bowl game some credit too.
No, I'm gonna judge him on what he does against who he does it against. I'm not going nitpick him, but what I'm saying is what we fail to realize about LSU, not only they had the players, they had the coordinator. We forget to Coach Brady and scheme it up. We forget that, we look past what Mac Jones did. Well, I mean, you still had Coach Loxley calling those plays. I mean, those type of things do matter. Scheming guys up to get guys the ball matter. Because, BJ, you said something. You said JT Daniels had almost 400 yards pass. He had 1 touchdown. 1. And what I'm saying is it's not that box score, the attempts, and the completions. It's how many points are you putting on the board? And that's the thing. It's like he might have great stats. I remember when the barometer used to be, Drew Lock, when he had 40-something touchdowns, guys blew that out the water within a couple of years after. So I do think that JT Daniels should have those type of expectations, especially when he burst on the scene. His first game went crazy. But Kevin, it's about getting in the zone. It's like what they said about Julio. Yeah, man, he's gonna get you a whole bunch of catches and a whole bunch of yards. How many touchdowns he had? Well, that's what wins games. Not the catches, not the yards, not the completions. You got to get in that zone, and if he can do that consistently, it won't matter about 300 to 400 yards. Give me what? I mean, if I'm 19 or 27 for 250 and 4 TDs, that's what blow with a running game. Because we keep on talking about what JT Daniels do. He's gonna need a running game to help him do it, because there will be games. Because even when Joe Burrow had that crazy year, they beat Auburn 23-20. People forget about that. So you're gonna have to be able to have that balance. His supporting cast gonna have to do their part, which I definitely think they're looking forward to.
And BJ, Kevin and I were talking about this. We kind of got cut off by the clock, but we were talking. When was really the last time you could say? Because we're going to talk about ultimate goals for Georgia. It's to win a national championship, right? When was the last time you could say you didn't have an elite quarterback and an elite running back on a team that won the national championship? I said maybe Jake Coker for Alabama was the last time, and even still, he had a pretty phenomenal season in that Lane Kiffin offense and had to put up over 40 points to beat Deshaun Watson and Clemson in that national championship game. I think now, just the way college football is being played, you can't count on a phenomenal defense to do it for you. You have to have that next level quarterback if you're going to win a national championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be able to make the throws situationally, no doubt about it. I don't think that having an elite quarterback necessarily means you have to throw it 40 or 45 times, or you have to throw for.
Well, no, and that's where we disagreed with Buck Bellew when he said Georgia has to open up the passing game and throw it 40, 50 times a game because look how bad JT Daniels played against South Carolina. Nobody's throwing a pass when your running backs are averaging 17 yards a carry in a game, right? So it's just you have to be able to do both.
No, I agree. I mean, I was always told, man, the defense, they are chauffeurs. Their job is to get you to the show, and once they get you to the show, it's the job of the offense to show out. That's how to me, football has always been played. But I do agree, Christian, your defense can get you there, but when you talk about that big stage, that's when the stars should align. You should show off what you got.
Well, I think we'll find out. Obviously, pretty much what Georgia's got week 1 against Clemson, and if JT Daniels comes out and plays the way he did against Cincinnati, and that's the guy that people are projecting we're going to see. I think Georgia's got a great chance to go out there and get it done in week number 1. We'll come back. More to come here on this Thursday. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here on this Thursday. Looking ahead to the 2021. Just go ahead and kill that rejoin music. You have ruined one of my favorite songs with the Kevin drop in there. It's what it is. But we looked at JT Daniels moving forward. Obviously, they got Clemson right out of the gate. Some other teams got some tough runs, obviously, in them. And as BJ said, sometimes it's not so much who you play, but when you play them. And if you play 2 or 3 stacked up in a row, sometimes that can take a toll on you over the course of the remainder of the season. I know Georgia State, I don't know who put their schedule together, but they did them no favors in that one. But teams like Kentucky, BJ, Florida, LSU, at Georgia, all in a row. I mean, that pretty much does it right there for you in that instance.
Yeah, and there are a lot of teams too with high expectations that have really tough schedules, right? Like I look at a program like Miami, for example. In terms of like a preseason power ranking, we've talked about how you construct a preseason poll. Do you do it off of a projected win-loss total, or do you do it off of, I think these are the best teams regardless of their schedule? And I normally do it off of the latter. I don't try to go in and look at the schedules or project wins or losses for 25 teams. I think Miami is a top 10 team talent-wise, and that's assuming De'Aaron King is healthy and is good to go. But what's worrisome is that your starting quarterback is coming off a significant knee injury, and these are your first 3 games. Alabama in Atlanta, good luck with that. Appalachian State, good luck with that. And your third game after those 2 is at Michigan State. It's like, what? I mean, that's what you're welcoming the season with. That's brutal. And I know there are some mid-majors that have really kind of scheduled up. Christian made a point about Georgia State's schedule, and I agree. It's borderline absurd. Like it's staggering when you look at it. But I think the difference is, to me, when you're a program like Georgia State, is the opportunities to make a name for yourself are probably worth the risk of a couple of extra challenging games out of conference. And then, the way the league slate falls is what it is. But it's not unreasonable, especially if they have a hard time against Alabama and it kind of takes a toll on them, to think Miami could be 1-2. I mean, before the season ever settles in. And that's a program with top 10 expectations. So, yeah, I think schedules are important. You look at Georgia, for example. I mean, Georgia's probably one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon your perspective, you're opening up with one of the 2 or 3 teams that might be better than you. So, yeah, the schedules are an important part of how we interpret, view, and kind of rank and file college football teams.
But Georgia doesn't really have that stretch of games where you're like, oh, this game. I mean, you do start with Clemson, and then you come back with UAB, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt, which should be a very favorable run for you. You get the week off before Florida. You follow it up with Missouri. So you don't really get those, hey, we just got back-to-back tough, challenging football games on the schedule.
I mean, Kentucky has Florida, LSU, then at Georgia. I mean, and the thing about it is you could be dusty after the LSU, who's definitely going to be on that redemption tour. You might be trying to count healthy bodies, when you play at Georgia. I mean, I ain't even going to talk about Georgia State. BJ, I do agree the opportunities are one thing, but the whole thing about it is, I mean, confidence is a big thing when it comes to football, and it's hard. I mean, when coaches say we're not even going to watch that tape. Well, coach, you said that 2 weeks ago. We ain't going to watch that one either. We're going to just move on. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Miami, Boston College, Notre Dame, Georgia. Let me tell these schedule makers something. See, these coaches be like, oh, man, it's a privilege. No. It's a privilege for who? You don't have to go out there. You got to deal with these teams. I mean, most of these teams' schedule, it's already built in within the schedule. I have to deal with within my conference, within my side of the conference. You don't be adding Notre Dame, Michigan State. LSU's going to UCLA. Why?
Well, because you do get it's a national game on the road. But I mean, without looking, I would be willing to bet you play LSU, go to UCLA the next week. It's probably at home against a school that's got a direction in its name, and you get a chance to recover. And I think that's a big part of it. Look at, like I said, with Clemson's schedule, Georgia's schedule, it's good to go out and schedule a big game. But then McNeese State, thank you, Christian, for looking that up. You go and come back. It's like, hey, we have a team that we can get well against, fix what we did wrong if we lost, and move forward, as Ben said, get the confidence back. Very rarely do you see, and I'm not pointing it because Alabama's good and beat anybody, but very rarely do you see Alabama go through a stretch where it's like LSU, Auburn, and Georgia. We're just going to play that 3 weeks in a row. No, it's LSU, and you hopefully get lucky. You have a little, maybe Arkansas in there. Then you play another hard game. So I think when you see schedules that line up like that, very favorable to making runs into the postseason. When you see teams that have got 2 or 3 weeks that are just brutal, I mean, that's hard. That is hard, for, as you said, for healthy bodies and to just play up every single week to that level. Because people talk about Nick Saban saying, oh, he gets his team to play up. Well, they're also better than Vanderbilt just walking on the field. So, I mean, if you get some games like that, they know they're going to win. It's a little different than saying, hey, we're going to have to battle LSU for 4 quarters, turn around, play Auburn for 4 quarters, and go from there. That takes a lot out of you.
No, I agree. And Ben, you know what it's like to kind of navigate a brutal schedule. I mean, you did it at Florida, but I think you have to, in your mind, quantify challenges versus opportunities. Like I know Georgia Tech, I talk to a lot of Georgia Tech fans who go, man, every year we got Clemson and Georgia, right? And now we get Notre Dame, and we got Virginia Tech, and we got Miami. But what could be a better kind of validator for a young program, Ben, than a win over one of those teams? I mean, didn't you guys, when y'all were like 500 and people were starting to say you're not going to make a bowl game, rise up and beat number 1 LSU?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm happy that you said that. But my first 6 games of my senior year, we were 3-3, right? Head to LSU. So we got a true freshman quarterback by the name of Chris Leak. We head to LSU. Willie Jackson, the great Willie Jackson Jr., by the way. He some kind of way he talked Coach. I mean, he talked to Coach Lookin to let him get the free ride, back to the boot, back to Louisiana, because he was playing with the New Orleans Saints at the time. Willie Jackson came to me and said, "Hey, True, listen, you don't got to worry about it, because if y'all lose to LSU, you can't even come back to Florida. Like y'all literally have to find residence here." But this was our stretch. We had LSU on the road. We had Arkansas on the road. Then we had Georgia. Then we had Vanderbilt. Then we ended the season with South Carolina. This is the thing. You do realize you're gonna run out of gas. Like at a certain point, even we won all those games, but it's like, but when you win them all, you go, oh man, y'all ended up 8-5. Yeah, you know why we ended up 8-5? I remember we started off 3-3. So now we 8-3. And maybe feeling good. Lost to Florida State. Got the brakes beat off by Iowa. Because you will run out of gas. I mean, I ain't never been to the state of Arkansas in my life. Finally get to play the Arkansas boys. We beat them, but it was rough. Georgia is Georgia. Thanks a lot, David Pollock. Vanderbilt, they just play hard. They shouldn't. Stop all that playing hard. Game's over. And then South Carolina, we won on the last play. It's rough. It's rough, man.
Vanderbilt played hard, but they shouldn't? What is
no. I mean that in a respectful way. It's like, hey, dude.
Is that respectful?
So think about this. Hold on. Y'all losing like 48-10. Yeah, man, but I don't want to look bad on tape. And it's too late. What do you? Hey, man, it's crazy.
I was trying to make with some of this, Kevin, is you as a university schedule inside of your contracts the out of conference games.
Right.
But I know for a fact that there were some head coaches this year. I know for a fact there were some head coaches this year that were throwing their hats when they got their schedules, right? It's you see Kentucky and in the SEC, Florida, LSU at Georgia. That's an SEC decision. You guys couldn't give us a South Carolina or a Vanderbilt inside of there. That's when these schedules become brutal. For Georgia Tech, you have to play Virginia Tech, then you have to hit the road and go to Miami, and then come home, host a good Boston College team, and then you're out of conference. You go to Notre Dame, and you're playing at home against Georgia. Like, that's just tough.
It's hard to stay healthy.
I understand you're going to play tough teams throughout your schedules, but it's when, BJ, they get packed on each other like that. That's what I'm talking about, is those stretches are absolutely brutal. And a lot of times it's from the conference offices that hand that down to you, and it can make or break your season.
Yeah, I agree. I also think sometimes some of that can be a little misleading. Like if you'd have played an LSU last year on paper, you might have gone, "Oh my God!" And for Missouri, for example, right? Like at the beginning of the year when Missouri's schedule came out, and their 2 SEC West crossovers were like Alabama and LSU, we all looked at it as, "My God!" Well, they beat LSU, and LSU ended up being a disappointment. So I think some of it just depends on kind of how
Arkansas and your two crossovers are Florida and Georgia.
Sure. Yeah. And I think whether you're talking about college football or college basketball with some calls, we've seen some the last couple of weeks. I think, you defer to some of the top programs, no doubt about it.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out on this Thursday afternoon. We'll come back all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com. Welcome back to 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you were with us on this Thursday. Coming up tomorrow on the show, we'll have Cole Kubelik. He will join us. He's been calling some FCS football. Also get his thoughts on the SEC East as well as it heads into 2021. Had a comment there for Ben from Lee. Lee said,
don't encourage him.
Okay. I'm just saying, he said Ben should have been a comedian. Dude is really
Whoa.
Apparently Ben's about one step away from his own Netflix special.
What I'm curious is, was this sarcasm or not? Like, because was Ben saying something positive about Florida, and Ben's like, oh, he's a comedian, huh?
I mean,
yeah. What's the quote off what's the movie with Joe Pesci where he's like, "Oh, Goodfellas, I'm a funny guy. You saying I'm a funny guy?
I amuse you.
Do I amuse you? Make me laugh. If I amuse you, Joe Pesci play a lot of characters like that. But no, I mean, I appreciate the back and forth with the fans. Christian is a food enthusiast as well as a psychiatrist when he's not working on the show. Listen, I love it.
I mean, if you're a psychiatrist, can I make an appointment?
No. He wants to keep his license.
I want to ask Ben something real quick. On social media, Brandon Marshall organized a combine for some of the players that are going to be going in the draft, and he got down and did the bench press, Ben. He knocked out 16 reps. You think you could beat him?
Absolutely.
Absolutely
not. No, that's not. No, it'll be a bunch of no. That's gonna be bad.
Ben's elbows and shoulders will be hurting.
Never can beat him though.
Not a chance. But let's appreciate him joining us here on the show from Braves Wire. Dan Matthews, 680 The Fan, and Raymond Johnson, former Georgia Southern D lineman, getting ready for the draft. Our guests here on this Thursday. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube for the podcasted version of the show. We'll see you tomorrow, Friday edition of 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network.